Hi everyone, Emily here, and today I have for you a mid-month wrap-up for July. Now, normally I don't do wrap-ups in the middle of a month. However, I have read 9 books so far, and there's 2 weeks left in July. So I realized, and I've got 3 books going, so that I should easily be able to read this week, and then I've got a whole other week. So bottom line, I realize I'm going to have to do a mid-month wrap-up. Otherwise, my July wrap-up is just going to be way too long. So how did I manage to read this many books this month? First of all, I don't have any big, chunky fantasy books that I'm going to be talking about. I have quite a few books that were easily to read within a day. Like, they were romance novels, and I'm a teacher with her summer off, and I'm single and I don't have kids. So like, my obligations are 0 right now. It's so delightful. And so I've just been enjoying time catching up on reading my books. So without further ado, let's get started with what I've read so far this month. So first, I have read Arsenic in Adobo by Mia P. Manasala, and this is a cozy mystery. And our main character, Lila, she moves back home to a small town outside of Chicago to help her aunt run her restaurant. And while she's there, her ex-boyfriend dies in their restaurant, and she becomes prime suspect number 1. So they investigate the murder, try to figure out who killed her ex-boyfriend. I thought this was the cozy mystery that I was looking for in Thursday Murder Club that I didn't get. I really did enjoy this. From what I understand, this is the first in a series, and the second book is coming out, I think, later this year. I could be wrong on that. I enjoyed it. I plan on reading the second book. This book also, because it's set in a restaurant and it's set in a Filipino restaurant, there features all sorts of descriptions of Filipino food. It made me really want to try some of that food. And I realized, and I was thinking about this video, and I realized, like, you have to go grocery shopping tomorrow, like today or tomorrow. And I'm going to be putting chicken adobo ingredients on my shopping list so I could make that and try that out. As I was reading this, I was like, it just kept me wanting to try some of the foods. It's like, I don't think I've ever had any Filipino cuisine. So I thoroughly enjoyed this. I think I give this 3.5 stars. Then the next book I've read is Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood, which I loved, and I gave it maybe 4.5 stars. So this is about Elsie, and she is, she's a postdoc, and she's trying to find, so right now her jobs are, she is like a teaching professor at several different universities, but she doesn't have like a tenured track position. So she doesn't have a position where she'll have job stability and insurance. So she's trying to find a position that's on a tenured track. In addition, she is type 1 diabetic, and she doesn't have health insurance, and insulin is very expensive. So because she's struggling to make ends meet, she also works for like an escort date for hire service. So she will go on dates for people who just need, like, for family functions. So that way people aren't like, well, who are you dating? When are you going to get married? She will go to those events with people just to ease the pressure on things. And it turns out that the brother of one of her favorite clients is on the interviewing committee for the job that she wants. I thoroughly enjoyed this book. Here's why I enjoyed it. One, the issue centered around diabetes. I totally understand. I have a relative, very close relative, who's a type 1 diabetic, and while we've never had to worry about how is he going to get his insulin. The effects of him going into insulin shock and having his sugar levels drop completely, we've lived through that numerous times. So I totally understood where she was coming with that. In addition, the emails that she gets from students and from parents, and she's teaching at a college level, and yes, parents still email about their kids' grades, even though they're over 18, and technically, legally, professors can't talk to parents about that stuff because they're no longer minors. So the emails that she would get from students, and were just like, yep, I understand that. I also have a friend who's an associate professor. Different subject matter. She's not in the science field. She's in the political science field. But hearing her experience in the job search and also the emails that she gets too, I was like, this is so relatable, so true to life, so funny. And I know some people say like, Allie Hazelwood kind of writes the same things. You know what? A lot of romance authors do. So I think that objection is just kind of silly. I thoroughly enjoyed it. The next book was Katherine Center, Hello Stranger. This is her most recent book, and it centers around Sadie Montgomery. I've been forgetting character names. It's been very frustrating for me. So this centers around Sadie Montgomery. She is a portrait artist, and she's entered into a portrait contest, and she's now like one of 10 finalists. So it's a big, huge career-making move for her. Well, on the eve of going to a party to celebrate her success and her being able to be one of these finalists, she gets into an accident and now has a condition called face blindness, which is a real condition. So what face blindness is like you can see that person, but like their face is kind of like a jigsaw puzzle where the pieces are kind of separate and don't seem to make sense in how they're put together. So that's a challenge if you're a portrait artist. So some people kind of describe it as like a Picasso painting, okay? So that's a challenge as a portrait artist. I thoroughly enjoyed the descriptions of face blindness and her adjustment to that. I gave this book 3.5 stars. Maybe 3 stars. I'm trying to remember. 3.5. The problem that I have is Sue, for being one of her best friends, I didn't feel like was really that great of a friend. There were some things that she did. Well, first of all, like when Sadie's discharged from the hospital, her evil stepmother, for lack of a better term, and basically that's how Sadie describes her, is that she's the evil stepmother. The evil stepmother picks her up. Well, if she really doesn't want her stepmother to pick her up, why isn't Sue picking her up from the hospital? Like calling Sue and be like, hey, can you pick me up? Second, like Sue tries again. This is going to be a little spoilery, so I'm going to raise my hand so that way if you don't want to hear the spoilers, just fast forward past my hand. Okay, so the problem that I had with Sue is like, for being such a good friend, you know that your friend, that Sadie is having a hard time painting people and painting their faces because you're the model for this contest. And so you're trying to come up with ways for her to figure out how to paint people's faces so that way she can still participate in this contest. You still throw her a surprise party to celebrate the fact that she is in this contest. Yet you know that she's having a hard time painting people and that she might not actually be successful in this contest. What? Like, that's just like rubbing salt into a wound. Like, that's not being a good friend. Like, I wouldn't do that to my friend. So that's the problem that I had with Sue. So the romance in this book, I'm done talking spoilery talk. The romance in this book, it was okay. I did like the relationship that she had with Joe. I just also, there's one moment that I felt like was kind of like a Superman moment, like a Clark Kent Superman moment with the coffee shop person that I just was like, for you not understanding this, and this was before you had the issue with face blindness, you're really not a very good portrait artist. So that's the problems that I had with that book. Next, I read Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. This is my first time ever reading anything by Rebecca Ross. I do have A River Enchanted, and reading this book has bumped River Enchanted up on my TBR sooner rather than later. Maybe not, I don't know when I'll get to it, but I'm going to get to it sooner than later. So this book, I just loved Rebecca Ross's prose. Like, it was just beautiful. The letters that Iris and, what was his name? Why can't I remember his name? Roman. Good gravy. I'm having a really hard time remembering characters' names this month. So Iris and Roman, the letters that they write to each other, it just has some really beautiful prose. It was just poetic. I love You've Got Mail. So I love the You've Got Mail vibes in here. I loved the fact that the war that we were getting was the trench warfare like World War One. I liked the twist that happened at the end where I was like, oh my gosh. I liked the tension. I liked the cliffhanger where I'm like, this is the first book in a series. At first I was bummed. I'm like, oh man, I wanted to stand alone. I thought this was standalone and it wasn't. But I'm looking forward to reading the next book, trying to figure out like, how is this going to be resolved? So this one I gave 4.5, maybe even 5 stars. For sure 4.5. The next one is What You Wish For by Katherine Center, and I did not like this book. 2.5 stars. I'll be kind and say 2.5, but I did not like it. So the problems that I have with this, first of all, Samantha or Sam, I thought she was very juvenile in how she handled her feelings towards Duncan. So Samantha is a school librarian at a private school, and Duncan is a principal, and several years ago they worked together. They were teachers at the same school in California. And she leaves her, this is going to be spoilery talk, so if you don't want to hear this review, like fast forward through this, because I have to explain why I did not like this book, and I don't know how to do it without giving spoilers. So Samantha leaves her job where she worked with Duncan because she just had such a big crush on him. And she couldn't handle working with him because she had such a big crush on him and she just kept thinking about him. You're in your 20s and you're acting like a middle schooler. Like, really? Like, I thought that was very juvenile, her reason for leaving the job. And then when he comes on to the new job as principal, I thought she was still handled that very juvenilely. Is that even a word? I still thought she was still very juvenile. In addition, another problem that I had is I felt how Duncan responded to his trauma was it was a stereotype response that I did not like. I thought he went so over the top in some things that at a public school, the teachers would not, at a private school where you're not under contract, the teachers would not have stood for it. They would have been quitting left and right. Because at a private school, teachers can quit whenever they want to. And I know this because I've worked in private schools and teachers have done that. And they've walked. It was so bad and so toxic. I don't know why they stayed. Like, they would have been quitting left and right. And there are just some other things that just made it like, I know when you read a book, there's willing suspension of disbelief. And this one, I just could not. I felt it was just so unrealistic. And the main character was just so juvenile. Did not like it. The next book I read was one of my most anticipated releases, and that was Warrior Girl Unearthed by Angeline Mbuli, and I loved this book. Absolutely loved it. So this follows Perry Firekeeper Birch. I had to remember her last name. So she is a relative of Daunis. This is 10 years later after Firekeeper's daughter. So, and we do see Daunis in this book. And 10 years later, Perry and her twin sister, they are now interns, like summer interns, working on different projects on their island. And one of the themes throughout this is reclaiming funerary objects and also the bodies of their dead ancestors from universities and from museums, and bringing them back and putting their ancestors to rest in the land. And that is the project and the task that Perry is working on as part of her internship, is trying to help get back her ancestors back to their resting grounds. I really enjoyed that discussion and learning about those issues. When I was in high school, I really wanted to be an archaeologist. I grew up in the Chicago suburbs. I loved going to the Field Museum, still do. Loved looking through the Native American and the Egypt exhibit. And I mean, and this was in the 90s, so keep that in mind. And I never realized and understood how we've acquired those things and the ramifications of that. And so, and as I got older, I realized that, right? It's stunning to me, it's shocking to me how hard it is for Native Americans to get their ancestors' remains back to them, and the issues centered around it. They're still struggling to get those back, and that's terrible. It's terrible. What I liked about this edition from Book of the Month is the author does put in like a bibliography for further reading for additional resources, and that's something that I do plan on checking out and reading some of those resources. I looked at the Barnes & Noble edition. They don't have those resources. But I appreciate that. She is now an auto-buy author for me. I really appreciate how she created a thriller and then also spoke to issues related to Native Americans and discussed those. So, really good book. The next book I read was How to Walk Away by Katherine Center. This one I gave 4 stars. And actually, I don't give this stars for the romance. The romance, I was just kind of like, eh. It didn't really do anything for me. What I really enjoyed more was the discussion on how Margaret gets into a plane crash and there was a fire. And she is paralyzed from like knee down, and she also has burns that she has to deal with. So what I appreciated more was the discussion on how to adjust to life post a serious traumatic accident, and not only just dealing with the physical aspect and learning how to get around and how to adjust and going through the different therapy, but also the emotional impact that it had on her. So to me, that was more the main focus than the romance. The romance was just like, eh. So this is my 3rd book that I've read by Katherine Center this month. And I really enjoyed The Bodyguard. I'm kind of wondering if part of my enjoyment for The Bodyguard is also the hype that I heard post reading it from other people. I'm going to try Happiness for Beginners. I have a hold on it. I want to read that because I know Netflix is doing the movie for it. So I'm going to read Happiness for Beginners so I can eventually then watch the movie. But I'm really kind of beginning to wonder, is Katherine Center the author for me? Because I DNF'd Things You Save in a Fire. I really didn't care for What You Wish For. Hello Stranger was eh. This was not the romance that got to me. So I'm wondering if Katherine Center is the author for me. Then lastly, I have read Upgrade by Blake Crouch, which this deals with genetics and genetic modification. So we the center of this story is the world is kind of in a dystopia right now, in a futuristic dystopia. So there's a lot more technology. And Logan Ramsey works for like this genetic organization that basically monitors, is there any scientist out there that's trying to unleash some strange bioterrorist virus through genetic modification or modifying animals or plants in ways that are just beyond how they should be modified, right? So he works for that, and he discovers that he is going through some changes and some modifications and upgrade. So he's getting genetically upgraded somehow. What I did not care for this is it just was so technical. And it's so funny because like I enjoyed Jurassic Park when I read it when it came out. And that's kind of a technical book. But this one, every time we started really getting into the genetics, I was just like, okay. And even like the action sequences didn't really do anything for me. He was so upgraded that I had a really hard time believing, like, how could you be this upgraded? Like, I don't get it. And some of the stuff that he just knew, I was like, just how? How can you just all of a sudden know all of this information? I really had a hard time believing this. Again, I'm also beginning to wonder if Blake Crouch is the author for me. I do know that of the 3 books that I know of, Dark Matter, Recursion, and Upgrade, I've kind of heard people rank Recursion as the best, Dark Matter second, and then Upgrade was people didn't seem to care for. But I also didn't really care for Dark Matter all that much. So, I don't know. The last book I read was Family Blessings by Laurel Spencer. I listened to that on Hoopla. I really enjoyed it. It was a reread. There was a moment that was kind of cringy. It's so interesting to me. Like, it came out in 1993. But the moment that was cringy to me, so like Chris is our main male character. And at one point in time, he goes out with another woman. This is before he starts dating Lee Reston. And he goes out with another woman, and just the description of her, it just was really cringy and seemed really kind of not okay how you described her. And it seems dated. In addition, kind of like her role, Lee, and how her role as a woman was described, I thought like how it was written, I thought this book came out in the 80s and not in the mid 90s. So that kind of took me by surprise. But overall, I still really enjoyed it, and I gave 4 stars. So, that was a lot. I'm really glad I decided to do a mid-month wrap-up. Sorry if some of my views on Katherine Center are a little controversial. Again, I want to like her. I don't know. I think maybe what I'm having a hard time with her is maybe she's just doing a little too much, and her book's like tackling some very serious issues, and then also throwing in a romance. I don't know. I don't know why she's not landing for me, whereas Allie Hazelwood is. I can't figure it out. I don't know. But at any rate, Some things that are on deck for me. I'm working on Inkblood Sister Scribe. I'm about 150, 200 pages into that. I'm really enjoying it. If you don't like blood, if descriptions of blood really kind of make you queasy, don't read it because that magic system focuses on blood. I'm about halfway through Bear and the Nightingale by Katherine Arden. And I'm working on a Sandra Brown throwback reread. So that's what I'm reading right now, and what should probably will be discussed in my monthly end of the month July wrap up. But as always, please like and subscribe. Happy reading. What are your thoughts on these books that I've read? And Katherine Center, what Katherine Center book do you think I should read that will get me to like her? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Happy Monday.